Welcome to Mind Shift Power Podcast, a show for teenagers and the adults who work with them, where we have raw and honest conversations. I'm your host, Fatima Bey, the Mind Shifter. And welcome, everyone. Today we have with us Stephanie Jane. She is from Texas. She's a musical artist. She's an author. And she's worked with rape victims in the Dallas-Fort Worth area of Texas for over 8 years. She is also the owner of Sharing Hope and Healing, and she is now an advocate for sexual assault survivors. So how are you doing today, Jane?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Stephanie Jane, forgive me.
That's okay.
All right, so tell us about why you are so passionate about this topic.
Well, I am a survivor of child sexual abuse and rape. I was 3 years old when my sexual abuse had started. So I literally grew up in that environment. And I really felt very lonely as a child. I felt isolated. I couldn't really talk to anybody about the abuse I was enduring. My stepfather, he used to tell me that if I told anybody, he would literally kill me. And the abuse that we endured at home, it didn't make us question whether or not he was capable of actually murdering us. So because I felt so isolated, I really wanted to, as I grew up, I wanted to reach out to other people. And the more I became aware of the statistics, statistically speaking, in the United States of America, 25% of the women will be sexually assaulted. And when you add in child sexual abuse, that number goes up to 44% of the women in the United States have been or will be sexually assaulted. So it's such an isolating trauma event that happens in our lives. But the reality is we're not alone. There are so many other women and men in America that have been through such similar experiences. So I guess I'm kind of an example for people to say, you know what, she's gone through such terrible traumatic experiences year after year. And I was able to find my healing. And because I was able to find my healing, I want other women who have gone through similar situations to be able to find their healing also.
Yes. And I want to interject, go back to something you said a moment ago with those numbers. Audience, keep in mind, although those numbers are accurate, they're only accurate according to what's been reported. So the real numbers are probably doubled. I'm going to go out to say doubled. I really believe that. And we're not talking about men so much today, but this subject applies to men too, because they almost never report it, but their numbers are actually quite high if they were reported. So I want you to keep in mind when you hear numbers, think about what goes with those numbers. You know, it's always stuff like this is always higher than what's reported. And Stephanie, I love the fact that you are truly, really an advocate for sexual assault survivors. And I love that you do that. And there needs to be more of it, because I think we're going to see those numbers go up, not because there's an increase in incidents, but I think there's going to be an increase in reporting. And I think we're going to see male numbers go up too, because we are changing as a society. And hopefully this will be a part of that. Now, when it comes to rape, I find that one of the biggest issues, and as a advocate for sexual assault survivors, I know that you see this too. How can someone recognize that they have been raped?
Well, you know, it's kind of interesting because if you're not really familiar with sexual abuse, I can definitely see how somebody could be confused. You know, alcohol is the number one date rape drug. And so,
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
Alcohol is the number one date rape drug.
College students, can you repeat that again?
Drinking alcohol is the number one date rape drug.
And it happens a lot on college campuses, and most of those numbers are not reported either. And the number one way they do it, people think is roofies. They don't even need to go that far. You just need to get your ass drunk, and then they can take advantage of you because it's real easy. That's a fact.
It is. And, you know, I mean, I think a lot of us have been there where we've taken one too many shots and we just can't remember what happened the night before.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a reality of going out and partying sometimes with people. But, there's evidence. There's evidence. I've had crisis calls where women have called me and said, I woke up, I went drinking last night and I woke up and just my thighs are killing me and my
Mm-hmm.
vagina don't feel right. And
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what happened last night. Or, I woke up in a strange place and nobody was there and I don't know how in the world I got there. So there are certain things that people don't have memory of. And of course,
Yeah.
roofie, I'll tell you what, date rape drugs are almost impossible to detect. Within 12 to 72 hours, those drugs can be completely out of your system. There's no smell, there's no taste. So somebody can put that in
Mm.
your drink and you don't know.
Yeah.
I've known women that have gone out and had a drink or two, and they know that that's all they've had to drink. And they're like, my goodness, I felt like I had 4, 5, 6 drinks and I lost memory and I don't understand how I lost memory. But that's what predators are hoping for. They're hoping for the confusion because they've taken advantage of you
Mm-hmm.
and you don't even have memory of that. So I honestly believe that if you're questioning whether you had unconsensual sex the night before, you should probably get checked out because honestly, I don't know what the rules are across the board in all states.
Mm-hmm.
Here in the state of Texas, it is now required that every hospital have a SANES nurse, which is a sexual assault nurse examiner.
Ah, yeah.
And so in the state of Texas, you can go to any hospital and you have to collect that evidence within 12 to 24 hours after being assaulted. If you take a shower, unfortunately, your body is unfortunately your body is the evidence that they need
Yeah.
to be able to collect. And I know that it's not the most wonderful thought to think, I don't know if I was sexually assaulted. Now I got to go sit in an emergency room. But honestly, if you want to seek justice, if you want to see, if you want confirmation as to whether this, had happened to you or not, most states have funding for rape exams to be done at no cost to you.
Mm.
So if you're worried about the financial side of things, you really don't need to worry about that because the federal government comes in and pays those medical bills for you. And if you're still not comfortable, every single county hospital across the board has to do a SANES exam on you if you show up in the emergency room and say, I think I was raped.
And even small clinics sometimes, and in different states, a lot of your small clinics that are typically in lower income areas, I find that I've never heard of anyone that doesn't do rape exams. They usually have the funding for that as well. The bigger hospitals are obviously, but if you're in a small town and there's a small clinic near you, just try.
Yeah.
It might be a possibility for you. So we talked about, the fact that people can, once you're drunk, you're an easy target for someone if they want to rape you, but also, when it comes, and roofies is the old word, but there's so many words for date rape drugs. So any of those. But what if someone had a sexual encounter and they're like, well, he pushed himself on me, but I didn't really, I said no once, but I didn't keep saying no. So I let him do it. Let's talk about that.
Well, consent is extremely important. Two people need to agree whether they want to have sex or not. So
Mm-hmm.
if you're in a place and you feel like you're being pushed to do something you don't want to do, then that is sexual abuse. That is rape. If you're uncomfortable having sex, then if you can leave the situation, leave the situation. But, there's, I remember, just to get real personal, I remember being in junior high school and being raped by Mr. Popularity. And he didn't have to force himself on me.
Mm.
I wasn't comfortable with the situation. I'd said no a few times, and he manipulated me in ways, that's the thing. Predators know who to go after.
They do.
And so they know who has low self-esteem. They know who has an uncomfortable home life. They just have a way of picking out the person that they, know how to take advantage of. Rape isn't about sex.
No,
Rape
it
is
isn't.
about power.
Yep.
And them taking power and control over you. And so if somebody's manipulated you to have sex, that's still rape because you did not consent, which is why alcohol is such a major component, because when you're under the influence, it's really hard to consent. It's really easy to just go with the flow. So consent, if you didn't agree to have these sexual activities, then it's still rape. Just like when Mr. Popularity, he didn't have to hit me. He didn't have to do any physical harm to me because I did have low self-esteem. And by that age, I had been sexually abused for so long by so many different people at that point. He was number 5 for me. He was the 5th person, and I was only in junior high at that point in time. So he was the 5th person that had sexually abused me. And in my mind, that's kind of what I thought. I just thought, okay, well, God has created me to be this tool for men to use. And that was my mentality. And because that was my mentality, it was really easy for this man to take control of the situation and manipulate me in a way. And, everything that he said that he was going to do, he said he was going to say all these rumors about me at school. He was going to, ruin my character. He was going to, I was in the music world back then even. And, I'm going to go spread this gossip about you and who you are. And what's sad about the reality is in the long run, he still did all those things.
Wow.
He still went and, unfortunately my maiden name is Moore. And so, unfortunately, far too many people in school called me Stephanie Moore the whore. And as a victim of rape and child sexual abuse, that hit me to the core. And people can manipulate you they watch you and they see what affects you negatively. That bully in school knows that they're bothering you. So they're going to keep bothering you because to them, their low self-esteem, that seems to build their esteem up. But the same thing often happens with predators is they know to look for the person who has the low self-esteem, who knows what bothers them, and they know that they're able to take power and control over that person. And so for me, I was a sitting duck per se, because I was so depressed. And unfortunately, that's a reality. And it's a sad reality because somebody's in a low spot and you're taking advantage of them. And I don't think that we should go walking around pretending that we're something that we're not. If we're in a sad place, then honestly, the best thing for us is to go through those emotions and allow ourselves to go through those emotions. Because if we stuff those emotions down, then they're going to pop back up at some other time. We're either going to heal from it or we're going to get worse from it. And so I'm not here to say that go out in public and be something different, but I think we need to be aware that how we go into the world, if we go into the world and we're I'm depressed all the time and this is who I am, and we wear that on our sleeves for
Mm-hmm.
everybody to see,
Mm-hmm.
we become a bigger target.
Absolutely.
You know, it's
I
sad, but it's true.
I will say this. I'm going to take everything you just said and dive a little bit deeper into the concept, because you're 100% right. You're 1,000% right, really. I say one of the best ways to combat against rape, against trafficking, against molestation, because at the end of the day, when you look at them from the bigger picture, they're all the same. They produce the same results. They do the same things. They just do them in
Yes.
different ways. The best way to combat against that is to reduce the victim pool. The best way to reduce the victim pool is by building up women and making sure they know who they are,
Amen.
which is young girls, not just women, forgive me, young girls, because those young girls become women who rule the world and change the world because they know who they are. When we don't know who we are the best targets for every manipulator, every piece of crap asshole who wants to control you. And those assholes are not always men, by the way. Sometimes they're women.
Yeah. Oh,
Let's not
yes.
just down on men, because it's not always men. The
No.
women don't get reported as much, but they do stuff.
No, but I would say as far as child sexual abuse goes, right? Because 1 in 10 children in America, that's men and women, little girls and little boys, 1 in 10 will be sexually abused as a child.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is it's often the babysitter. It's often the coach.
It's somebody in the household, the uncle. Yeah, somebody in the household. And there's lots and lots and lots of numbers that reflect that, because I've looked them up before, just doing shows like this and out of curiosity. And yeah, you're 100% right. I want to talk about something else that I know that some of our listeners who maybe haven't been raped and they haven't been molested or sexual assaulted in any kind of way, but how I want them to walk away with something that they can use in their own lives. So what are the telltale signs? What are just a few of the signs anyway of someone who has been raped? And maybe we have a cousin, a friend, a niece, somebody down the block, whatever. What are some of the signs we can?
Well, if you're really close with somebody, and I mean, you're going to notice subtle changes with that person, because, when somebody has overpowered you, that leaves you in such a traumatic state that there will be definite signs. Is that person losing weight or is that person gaining weight? That's a huge one. Are their eating habits normal anymore? I would say, are there bruises on that person? That's something to think about, especially if they're younger.
What about fear?
Depression? Exactly. Fear, anxiety, worry, all of those things. Of course, depression usually happens.
Yeah.
And you're not going to know why that person has changed so much. Somebody who used to be a very positive person, somebody who used to go to school and love going to school, all of a sudden they don't care about school so much anymore. They don't care about the way they look anymore. Somebody who used to love to get all dolled up to go to school, and now they're like, I don't want to wear makeup anymore. I don't want to do my hair anymore. I don't want to look cute anymore. I'm just going to go to school in like my joggers. And so it's little subtle things that you're going to notice. Another big one is if somebody used to be a hugger, used to like physical contact with you, and all of a sudden they're standoffish. They don't want you to touch them anymore. That's a huge sign. A lot of women that have been sexually assaulted no longer want anybody to touch them. Anytime I deal with a survivor that has just recently been assaulted, I ask, is it okay for me to give you a hug?
Yeah.
And if you think that somebody has been sexually assaulted, then that would be a great thing to ask. Can I hug you? Can I come into your personal space? Because their personal space was stolen from them. And so, are there little things you can do to help them regain their power in life? So look for areas where they used to have power, where they used to have angst to go after things. And if they're not going after those things, it would be a really good idea to just start asking little questions, Hey, I've noticed your attitude about things is a little different. I'm just concerned for you right now. Is there anything I can do to come alongside you right now? Is there anything that's happened that has caused you to change in any way?
When it comes to fear, I just want to go back to that particular one. And I said it because I think we say the word fear, we understand the dictionary definition of fear. But when I'm going to reword some of what you said, because some of what you said actually is fear. You're standoffish from hugging anyone. That is rooted in a fear. So when people have new fears that pop up, or where there was once joy, it has been replaced with a fear. And that fear can be of different things depending on the details of the person's life. That's an indicator that something traumatic has happened.
Yes.
Look for fears, new fears, or increased fears, or illogical fears. There's a reason why they pop up and they weren't there before. Right. And this goes beyond just the subject of rape. It just, in all trauma, something that's common, fear. And I've just something I've learned through counseling a lot of people, but also talking to a lot of therapists and people in positions like yours. For the listeners, that fear is such a big deal.
Fear is interesting.
Go ahead.
Fear is interesting. As you know, I wrote a book, Fear Not, For You're Redeemed. And I've studied fear for many years. I used to be controlled by fear in so many areas I didn't even realize I was being controlled by fear. And I wasn't, I was an extremist, right? I could go from one end of the spectrum to the other. There was this part of me that would put out this like really happy persona of this is who I am. And I love being creative. And so I would love being able to be on stage and do those sorts of things. And so if I was involved in those sorts of things in that time frame, I would be over happy about it. I would like overshare about it as a way to mask
overcompensate.
The fear.
Yeah.
Yes. And so it's interesting. So sometimes fear is recognizable as fear, but other times it's like you said, the overcompensation.
Good point. Very good point. Yeah. Very good point.
So if on the other end, if you're noticing your friend is like the cheerleader, because that's just a thing, right? And so is your friend a cheerleader and they were in it for whatever reasons, and maybe it was the guy on the football team that had taken control and had raped her. And now she's going to go out and she's going to go be a cheerleader. And now she's going to do over and above whatever she's done before, because now she wants to pretend it never happened. And she wants to overcompensate. And I'm going to be the best at this. And this is what's going to make me feel so good inside that I forget what happened to me. So it's kind of interesting. You can look at somebody and say, okay, this person's gone down the tubes in this way. Or you can say, I've noticed you really trying to put yourself out there and make yourself acceptable to everybody and try to make everybody love you and try to make everybody come alongside you in a different way. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's
most
interesting.
Masking. No matter what topic we're talking about, actually, most masking is rooted in an insecurity of some sort.
It's not always that person that's going into depression.
Yeah. And very, very valid point, because sometimes we don't recognize people because they do put on a mask. But you have to know someone to recognize what is or isn't a mask. So sometimes you're not going to know it if you don't know the person. You're not going to be able to recognize it. But if you do know the person, these are the things you can look for. This conversation was so rich that I decided not to cut it off, and it went quite long. And because of that, I've decided to split the conversation into 2 episodes. With it being such a heavy topic, it's a lot to take in. The conversation continues in part 2. Thank you for listening to Mindshift Power Podcast. Please like and subscribe to my YouTube channel at The Mindshifter. If you have any comments, topic suggestions, or would like to be a guest on the show, please visit fatimabay.com/podcast. Remember, there's power in shifting your thinking. Tune in for next week.